this is probably one of the more exciting podcasts that I've had. I'm joined by Robin from the Wild Dispatch. I had the fortunate opportunity of joining him on his podcast, and now he gets to reciprocate the deal with coming onto mine because Robin has got some incredible stories to share, and I just thought it would be fantastic to have him on, especially now at the time where the podcast is reaching some new heights from men's health and some really interesting topics out there, and Robin can share a lot of light. Robin, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's absolutely awesome having you. Yeah, and I mean we've got a couple of topics highlighted for this episode, but like I said earlier, I'm not going to stick to it. But firstly, I wanted to pick your brain on a couple of things. But firstly, I think just for everybody out there, just to give them some sort of background on who you are, what you've come from, and how the hell did you get into hunting?
Okay, so I often miss bits here, so if I do, then jump in. So first of all, I'm Robin. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm British, but it's a kind of a strange existence at the moment. I'm British, but living currently in Northern California in the US. I'm married to a South African,
Yeah,
and so it's a whole cocktail going on there.
yeah,
I uh, I actually got into hunting. I guess we can jump into that now, but I got into hunting in perhaps the most backwards way that a Brit or an American normally would, which is actually really I started hunting proper, or really getting the bug for it in South Africa because of my wife's family and just being there on vacation or holiday, and they were like, well, we're going to go to the desert, going to go to the Karoo or to our farm. Do you want to shoot some springbok? So
jeez.
I was like, well, yeah, that sounds like that sounds amazing, and kind of that's where it went. Yeah, I mean that's a whole story which we can get into. I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
get into it now, but
yeah. No, so your story is probably one of the more unique ones, and especially from a Brit. I mean, is I know hunting is at the moment it seems a little bit taboo over that side.
you mean in England? I guess
Yeah,
you're
well,
saying.
I mean,
I
because they've closed the trophy hunting as far as more than so it's not. I mean, it's not a common thing as much as it is here in South Africa, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Or America, obviously. So I'm not going to claim to know more than I do within the context of hunting in Britain. I'm not very up to date with the news over there because I guess I'm in my own bubble over here and in South Africa. Um, but yeah, I did do a bit of hunting over there. But actually, the things that I've noticed, small conversations I've had with people, is that there does seem to be more restrictions over weapons. And then I guess I didn't actually know about the importation of trophies um, being banned now. That's yeah.
Mm,
I mean, that's gonna. I can imagine it's gonna have a big impact on the industry.
yeah, and so you you were born and raised in Britain or in England, and then you shifted your way over to the US, and then you meet this South African girl. And what I mean, so out of this whole thing, there's no background of hunting whatsoever. So what was your first perception on hunting itself?
So um, I would say I'm not a particularly judgmental person ever, so I never really had. I wouldn't say I had a big perspective on hunters before I became one. I did actually dabble a bit of hunting in England beforehand, so there was definitely like a fire in me from a young age. Except with the limitations there, I mean, unless you know a lord or a lady with lots of land, you're not really going to do any. You're not going to do any big game
Yeah,
hunting. So my hunting when I was young in England was restricted to an air rifle. I think it was 12 foot-pound force, which to give you like a frame of reference, I think the bow that I shoot now is like 97 foot-pounds. So you're using just basically a spud gun to uh, to try and shoot small game, but it was great fun. You know, it kept me
yeah,
occupied shooting animals for the pot, pheasant and rabbits and squirrels and basically anything I could find. And yeah, so that I guess I was in some small way a hunter when I was younger, but but big game didn't happen until much later. But I guess to answer your question, I didn't I didn't really have a big perspective on hunters or big game hunters at the time. But I do think if I maybe think back to like 10 years ago, if I went in a like a time machine now and I told myself in London working as a writer, oh, in 10 years you're going to be dragging a bear on your back out of like a deep valley in the middle of California, I think I probably would have thought that was quite cool.
Yeah.
I'm giving myself credit there.
Because I mean, the other thing is you've come over, and I mean, my experience of what I've witnessed with you is that you didn't waste any time and get into one of the more difficult disciplines of hunting, and that's bow hunting. What enticed you to delve into that sort of section in the hunting part?
Yeah, that's a good point. I did. I think I only shot one big game animal with a rifle before switching to a bow. And actually, to be honest, the reason why that happened was because I stupidly broke my bow the night before.
Oh shoot!
just I don't know, it was a foolish moment. And when
Yeah.
you're new, you don't understand technology, and I don't know exactly what happened. I think I was sat there thinking, yeah, this is going to be amazing. This is where I'm going to be. I like drew my bow back again, and then the deer is going to walk past me here. And I think I like twisted my body and I like really talked my bow at that moment. And just in that moment, the string popped off my bow, and I was like,
Awesome.
I didn't know that was going to happen. And thankfully, I had my gun in my car as a backup, so
Yeah.
that worked out. Um, right, I completely lose my train of thought. What was your question?
So what made you want to delve into like the more
Oh,
difficult discipline of hunting?
okay. Yeah, I think I wasn't really even aware of bow hunting as a thing until early on. I Actually, what happened was I live in a tiny coastal town in Northern California called Fort Bragg. Actually, out in the redwoods. I'm actually a bit outside of town, and I was really hungry at that point. Being a new hunter, being in America, trying to learn as much as I can, and maybe try and meet some people. You go through hunter training and everything in the US. I'm not sure if it's the same in South Africa,
No.
but yeah, you have to like get a hunting license, and to do that you have to, I think, like study for a couple of days over a weekend or something like that, and you get certified. And the guy that actually I met there in town, his name's Dennis McIver. He's actually a guest on the show, on my show, The Wild Dispatch. But it turned out that the only course available here, and I didn't even understand how because nothing happens in Fort Bragg. It's such a tiny town. But, there was a bow hunting proficiency course, and I saw that thing pop up in Fort Bragg. Normally, everything is like a 2 hour plus drive away in
Mm.
Sacramento or one of the other big towns. So yeah, I went to that course and learned all about bow hunting, even though I didn't own a bow, had never had never shot a bow. And Dennis, bless him, took me under his wing. He actually lives just a couple of roads across from me, and he said, "Hey, do you want to just come over? You can shoot my bow for a minute." The draw length was completely wrong, but he was patient. He taught me a few things, and I was completely hooked. I was like, "Well, I've got to get a bow now. That's what needs to happen."
So you get this bow, and now you start delving into these the more difficult disciplines of hunting. But so South Africa, obviously, you've mentioned that your wife's from there.
Mm.
Um, but you have got some sort of now invested interest into the country. I don't know if you want to touch a little bit more on that.
You mean the olive farm?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a long goal that my wife and I have had. Um, I guess it's one of those things, right? You always have dreams, and they don't really become a reality unless you kind of talk about them and make some kind of plan. At least that's what we've learned the last decade. So it's always been a dream of ours to have a bit of land in South Africa, because ultimately we do in the long run want to move there. I mean, we just have such an amazing time. We try and spend as much time as we can over there. So yeah, originally we were just going to try and buy a piece of land, and we looked for years and could never find anything the right price. I mean, thankfully, property is a little bit cheaper than in the US. I mean, we'd have no chance here. Um, but yeah, we spent time looking. Nothing ever really felt quite right, and we weren't even looking for a farm. It just happened to be that this place popped up in a town called Prince Albert. And yeah, my wife had been watching this piece of land on, I think it's Zillow, maybe, is the website that always has land on in South Africa.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was keeping an eye on it, and it just didn't sell, and we managed to sneak in there when we were over there last, and make an offer, and we got it. And now all of a sudden we're olive farmers, which is quite daunting.
I just, I often, I have a lot of people on my podcast, and we have a lot of discussions, and discussions can always lead one way, but the main focus is obviously what they expertise in, so what they do and what they do well. But with you, it's been such a lucky experience meeting this guy that's just completely overwhelmingly open to change, and that, I think's been my biggest draw. I mean, we can talk about hunting until the cows come home, right? But honestly speaking, I think just chatting to you, and just your ambition on life, and even your podcast, I mean, it's just so incredible, the different disciplines that you've interviewed, and the guys from hunting mushrooms, and hunters and bow hunters, and just it's just such a unique way. So I mean, I guess if I what I'm trying to ask is what is your perspective on this bigger picture? And I mean, you're just such an interesting guy. So what is your biggest, broadest perspective on this whole?
Wow, that's I like it, Dylan. Just jumping in with the big questions early on. What is my perspective? I guess do you mean on life in general, or like an approach to new experiences? I guess is that your question?
Yeah. So I kind of, I mean, we spoke about it on your podcast, right? Is the
Yeah.
men's health thing, and I tend to kind of say that a lot of things happen in life that give you opportunities. Mine was, I was diagnosed with depression, so I had the fortunate opportunity to dive deep inside myself and kind of deconstruct who I am as a person, and what I really want out of life, and
Mm.
my purpose in essence. And I kind of found like this niche, and I've followed it as conservation through hunting. And with you, I've never really met somebody as free spirited as what you are, and just so open to discussion from completely different avenues. So what is it that I mean, starting the podcast, doing the hunting adventures, and all that? What is your biggest goal that you want to get out of that?
Okay, so I guess to kind of jump back to your first question, the little thing I was thinking is I always try to be open. And to be honest, I don't think I have to try very hard. I think I'm just naturally that way. That it's
Mm,
just people are just fucking fascinating, aren't they? Like
yeah.
there's so many interesting people out there. To be honest, I think everyone is interesting. It's just whatever the thing is that they are into, or whatever their obsession is. I've always found that like deeply fascinating. So I think that's maybe where that comes from, is that it's that coupled with like a big hunger that I have to just learn. And I have this new, well, I've always been interested in wild places. I've always like loved going outside ever since I was a little kid, having adventures with my parents and doing various different things. I've always loved being out in the wild. But I guess part of this podcast and part of my kind of life in general has just always been fascinated by learning new things and new skills and hearing amazing stories and all kind of that kind of jam, and so it kind of all swept up very nicely the moment that I I guess actually the moment I did a podcast as a guest for the first time, and it just something clicked in my brain, and I was like, wow, this is really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that's
Conversation.
yeah, conversations, and I think we, and this is like I guess a big perspective, but we're living in a time now, and I'm aware of the irony of talking to you through technology right now.
Yeah.
So for that, I am grateful. But we live in this world of, it's almost like a constant expanding explosion of technology, which is becoming more and more consuming of our attention. Things like these little devices, they're becoming more and more effective at just sucking all of our focus and our
Mm.
endorphins and all of that stuff. So I just think that
From
trying
your
to,
conversations, sorry, Robin, before
yeah.
interrupting you there, from your
Go.
conversations with people, have you felt that we've lost connection? Because I mean, you've interviewed some really interesting people. Have you
Mm.
felt us as a human race we've disconnected from those sort of aspects a lot more right now than ever before?
I I can't say that I know because I don't. I'm not like a scientist. I haven't done a study, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's the case. And if anything, I actually feel like the younger generation. I'm seeing nieces and nephews growing up around me, and their whole frame of reference is these black mirrors, these technological boxes, and that is their everything. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel like the outside world and like the amazing endless amount of entertainment that can come from that is in a bit of an unfair fight right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's part of this podcast for me. It's maybe a lofty dream, but I would love to, in some way, break into their digital bubbles, people's bubbles, and just give them insight into all these amazing things that are happening in the world. People that are having inspiring connections with different places, and
Mm.
just it could be foraging, fishing, farming, hunting, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the lofty answer.
Because I mean, we're back in school, and yes, I mean, you and I both. I mean, I'm sure we're pretty much the same age, but
Yeah.
when you, as kids, a lot of our homework we were always told, well, if you need information, you need to go to the library, whip out the encyclopedia, and go through those notes, and then you kind of like got to jot it down on your homework or whatever it may be. And now we've got it so easily accessible, from on, like you say, on our technology devices. However, I kind of get this feeling, and I'm sure it's a lot better with you because you're interviewing such a broad range of people. um, I kind of get this feeling by having these conversations, by actually, I mean, when when you sent me that photo of your hunt in South Africa, it was an opportunity for me to live that moment with you, even though I'm thousands of miles, well, a couple of 100 kilometers away. But I got to share that with you because I knew how much it meant to you because of the personal attachment we had in a very very short space of time. So I guess my point I'm trying to get across is that
Yeah.
being hungry enough to go out there and seek this information. It's one thing to pick it up on your phone, to have the information on the phone, but to seek the information that people have actually first-handed experiences. I listened to one of your podcasts with the mushrooms, and that as as interesting as the gentleman was, it was just such an eye opener for me personally, because I actually realized I didn't know. I thought I knew quite a bit of what's actually going on in the wildlife space, but I actually don't know too much. And it's a humbling experience. It's very, very humbling. So, what has been your motivation to go and seek beyond the hunting, beyond all that sort of stuff, and seek out? it just being something that's interested you. Like you said, you're interested in people, but they
Mm.
bring this experience with them, you know. So is it something that you've experienced for yourself?
So stop me if I'm going down the wrong rabbit hole and answering the wrong
No.
question. But I think for me, I don't know if it's like some condition that has never been diagnosed, but I find that I can have like ultra focus in one specific area, and if I'm not interested in that thing, then good luck. And it meant for
Mm.
meant for like a rocky school experience when I was young. But so I think what my thinking was with this whole adventure, or I guess within the context of the Wild Dispatch, I intentionally wanted it to be broader because I can passionately say I absolutely love bow hunting. I am so obsessed with it at the moment, and I have been very obsessed in similar ways with some other things over the last decades of my life, and that's fine. I think I'm okay with things moving and changing, but by having that in mind, I wanted to create something that I knew would have like the longevity that I'm confident that I'm going to be able to go on doing that for years and years and years.
Mm.
And it's probably a very practical answer, but by expanding and learning all of the different things on offer in the wild, and also it's just interesting to me. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Like
Yeah.
moving from the city. I was with my wife, we were living in LA, working that kind of classic urban lifestyle, working really hard, being time poor, making money but spending it all on rent and expensive restaurant
Mm.
meals and all that kind of stuff, you know. And then the transition happened where we moved out into the countryside, and just something just clicked, or at least started to click in our brains, you know. And that's where gradually we made our way here to a very small rural area of Northern California that most people haven't heard of. It's just a different kind of existence, you know. Like it's a
Mm.
slower, it's a slower, I don't know if it's necessarily always slower, but you have a different focus, and you're able to take in things in a different way and appreciate different stuff like here. And I think that's where my like awareness began of nature. I mean, like, case in point, I have a trail cam here set up by my front door, and a bear just walked past there like 2 days ago. And I know that all the bears are like cruising through here. They're all hungry, you know, trying to fatten up now because it's spring.
Yeah.
It's spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. And just being in an environment where you're heading around in nature and you're just seeing these amazing animals, it just, I think that's the thing that made me go like, I gotta check this out more. You're seeing mushrooms, you're like, what are they? Can I eat that?
Tell me
Probably
good.
get
Tell me good.
should probably get a book first. Should caveat that, everyone, please don't go around eating mushrooms without proper research. But yeah, so I think just by being in an environment that's so rich with those opportunities, it made me realize, okay, I want to find out everything, or at least as much as I can.
So by you giving up a certain lifestyle, have you? I don't think compensated is the right word, but have you given up on? Was there a sacrifice that you had to make, financially, personally, whatever it may be?
Definitely. Yeah. Um, Absolutely. I think on all fronts that there's always going to be an element of sacrifice. But I'll tell you maybe a little story. It's not a hunting story, I'm afraid. But how that whole process ended, I can't say too many things because I'm like up to my eyeballs in NDAs.
Mm. Oh, jeez.
but but I was working for a very big tech company at the time, and it was an amazing opportunity. But it was incredibly intense hours, very poor life balance, and um, one thing that was nice actually about moving to the US, that was the company that moved me and my wife over, and so I'm thankful for that opportunity in that moment to kind of have an adventure and try something new. You know, we didn't know if it was going to go well or not. But part of that negotiation was getting a green card. They needed to get a green card for both myself, and then my wife would also, Hanneke would also get the green card. Because otherwise, I mean, the way that they pitched it to me originally was like, yeah, you're going to come here, you're going to work really, really hard, and your wife isn't going to be allowed to, she's not going to be allowed to have a job. So I was like, well, I don't know if you know my wife, but that's not going to fly. She's not going to be happy just sitting around.
She can't sit still now.
There's no way. So that's when the offer of a green card came about. Long story short, ultimately what happened is I was deeply unhappy in that company, and I had to ride the fine line between basically doing enough of a good job to not get fired for negligence.
Yeah.
But doing like a bad enough job that they would want to let me go in terms of like a redundancy. Because if I left early, basically they gave us a bit of a, you know, if you move countries, sometimes they give you a bit of a bonus to move over, and I would have had to have paid all that back. So it was like, oh, I can't be in this company. I've been there for like a year and a half, and I think it was longer than that, and that I had to be, you know, you're locked in. They call it like handcuffs. So ultimately, we got made redundant. Happy days. I think I remember like riding my bike because I used the bike for transportation around Santa Monica. It was this bizarre, almost like there's just something about Mary, you know, when Ben Affleck's walking and he's laughing and crying at the same time, like I think I was doing exactly the same thing as I was riding my bike back to Santa Monica. I was like so happy and so like so much emotion at the same time. It was a strange moment. But ultimately what happened was from that point, we were in a really weird situation where the visa fell away. We didn't have a visa anymore, and the green card was still in process. And what that meant was we weren't allowed to leave the country. We weren't allowed to leave America, and I wasn't allowed, or neither of us were allowed to get a job. So we had to like live in California, which is, I don't know if you know, but it's a notoriously expensive place to be. And so we had to be there for like, I think it was 6 or 7 months. So we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? So, well, first of all, we're going to get the hell out of Santa Monica because it's, you know, I don't know, thousands of dollars of rent every month.
Yeah.
So what we actually end up doing was buying a caravan, like a travel trailer, as people would say in the US. And we went to Joshua Tree and we lived there for like 6 months. We traveled all around California and Oregon and Washington and New Mexico and Arizona as well. So we moved around and traveled around a lot, and we spent a lot of time in nature. And it was just this amazing moment where we put all of our possessions that we'd spent all this time, all our kitchen utensils, all this stuff, and just put it in storage in Joshua Tree. We slid down the shutters, and all we had was 2 plates, 2 mugs, you know, 1 set of cutlery, and it just really taught us this lesson about what do you need? What do you really need to be happy? You know, and it was stressful and there was some adjustment, but it was just this amazing moment where we were like, wow, we're just like in nature watching ants carrying shit into their holes in the desert, you know, hearing the coyotes howl outside the window and being terrified at first because we don't know what they are, or it's just the most deathly sound. So I think that was a very long-winded answer, but that was kind of the beginning of like an awakening of realizing how powerful being out in wild places is.
Yeah. And I think that was one of my biggest inspirations, especially to have you on, was hunting kind of it touches this deep primal instinct that I think over society and evolution we've kind of lost connection with, and there's not too many people like yourself that venture out into the wild and want to reconnect with these boundaries. And I think a lot of people say to me, um, I think on your podcast and a couple of other podcasts before, I've always said that my main goal has always been to try and make a sustainable living out of professional hunting, right? But I think if I look back at it, and if there's conservation that's needed, it's conservation of our primal instincts as well. To reconnect with these, because that's so important, right? And we're going to touch on that a little bit now. Is from a mental health point of view, it does it opens a lot of doors, it's in some ways I like to refer it and say hunting did save my life to a certain degree, but it's also allowed me now to fortunately have conversations with guys I connect with, right? And although we're on two completely different spectrums of how we grew up and stuff, it's just such a unique way in connecting. And I think I'm sidetracking here a little bit, but
No, it's good.
I think we kind of forcing our way back into, like I said, our primal instinct, and not just from a hunting perspective, from a conversation piece. If something remarkable happens out there with us, we share it with one another through pictures, conversations, and all these sort of things. And I think from a human point of view, if I had to look at what does conservation mean from me as a hunter, yes, it's saving the species we hunt, and it's also saving these traditional engagements we have with one another, right? So yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, I knew a little bit of your back history, and I'm glad you got to share that with us, and because it's such a unique one, right? You often hear of people venturing off and stuff, but to really get your perspective on it is such an awesome way. So, yeah, Robin, just touching on mental health. You said
Yeah.
you also had your battles. What was it exactly, and where did you find that you could turn it around? Because not a lot of men get that opportunity to.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, I should probably say, although I've been through some deep depressions in the past, I am grateful that I had those experiences quite early on in my life. I say early on, I mean, I guess I was in my early 20s. I think I'm grateful for that because what it did is it triggered me to be motivated to learn the skills that there are in the world that you can use. It's almost like a mental health toolbox, I guess.
Yeah.
That an awareness, and also just being able to figure out whatever it is that helps me maintain my equilibrium, so to speak. I guess in an actual, like, the actual thing that happened was when I was first working in the industry that we kind of talked about a bit. It was in England. I was working in London. I think I was maybe 23, 24 years old. And myself, and actually I was working with another guy. We were working as a partnership. We were working incredibly hard as I was a creative writer, and he was it's like, I'm getting into nuances that aren't necessary, but he was kind of fulfilled another role, but together we were kind of like a creative unit, coming up with ideas for TV ads and all kinds of stuff, radio, digital things, campaign ideas. You go like, oh, whatever it is, like Colgate toothpaste or whatever. What's the big idea? Shiny white teeth will make you feel rich forever. I don't know, some shit. That was us. That was us thinking that it was the most important thing in the world. And just the culture of that, of advertising agencies. I mean, like, if you ever seen Mad Men, it wasn't like the 60s, I guess, but like
Yeah.
in the more modern thing, it's like very intense. You're working incredibly hard. And as with anything, right? Like, when you're beginning at something, you have that motivation to just really push yourself. And I also think this is another element when you're young too. At least I don't know if it's the same. I can't speak for women, but I think with guys is that when you're young, you're like trying to push your boundaries. You're like, how hard
Mm.
can I push myself? Like I'm just going to keep hitting this wall and see what happens because I think I'm invincible. And I was just the same. So we were partying hard, going out, just drinking, doing all kinds of other things which may or may not be legal. And it was, yeah. And then at the same time, just working incredibly hard, working weekends, working long hours, using a lot of like caffeinated drinks to just get through it all. And I think that just took its toll after a while. And things which, although I wasn't aware of how I was feeling myself really, because I wasn't that kind of connected, things started to take a downward turn. And just even the most basic of jobs became completely overwhelming. And I was just kind of effectively, after a while, just incapacitated. I remember like one particular day, we'll get the violins out now. But I remember one day we had a busy day, lots of meetings, but one meeting that was just not a hard meeting at all. I mean, my work partner was very good at like schmoozing the industry at that time, and we got a lot of perks, which is nice. But some of that was production companies with directors and things. They would have their reps that would come and they would show us work, and they'd take us out for meals and drinks, more of that kind of drinking, eating, that kind of stuff. And it was just a day meeting a rep. There was no pressure on us whatsoever. All we had to do was just watch some directors work. Like that was it. Like nothing. You just clap like a seal, and that's it. But I
Yeah.
was so overwhelmed that I couldn't even go into that meeting. And I think my work partner saw me just like, instead of walking into the office, I just like kept walking past and just left the building. And went off on my own for a few hours. I just couldn't face anything really. And I
Really?
think he found me in a coffee shop somewhere, and we chatted. And I'm very grateful that happened when it did, because there was a really good system in place in the UK, in London, in that agency, that basically they said like, what's going on? I said like, this is how I'm feeling. And they immediately got me into therapy. They just like set me up. I had like 10 or 15 sessions with a therapist immediately who taught me all these things. Like I got to like figure out exactly what it was that I was feeling, and then learn how to deal with some of those things, and also just learn to like get the warning signs, and then be like, okay, I need to take care of myself a bit better now.
That's. I wanted to ask you this while I was listening. I I kind of believe that everything happens for a reason. Do you think a lot of the hardship that you went through, um, and the traumatic experiences, whatever it may have been at the time, but do you think that kind of molded you on your pathway to where you are today?
Yeah, I definitely do. I absolutely do. It's I think I should also say that everybody's different, and this definitely works differently for different people. And I know some guys, they like to take the Cam Haines keep hammering, smash yourself with a
Mhm.
hammer into
Yeah.
submission, and that's great. It seems to definitely be working for Cam,
Yeah.
and a lot of other people too. But the thing that I learned, and I've pushed myself very, very hard, both physically and I think mentally as well in the past. But it's more of a, we're getting into woo woo country now.
Mhm.
But it's more about like encouraging yourself and like helping yourself, carrying yourself through really difficult times. Um, just like trying to like float past it, float over it, rather than smashing through it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's been kind of my learnings, I think. Um, yeah. Did you have a question, or I mean, I could just keep going all day.
No, but I mean, firstly, just thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, it's never easy, and like I said, I think we somewhat lose touch with one another, and especially as men, we don't have a lot of I always used to find it a lot more difficult to have conversations with people, especially through trying times. But
Mm.
I think if we just fold away and just understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share emotions and stuff. I think there's going to be a lot less of us losing our lives continuously on a daily basis because the statistics aren't looking good for us men. But I wanted to get into the hunting side of things, changing the topic a little bit, but um, yeah. So, Rob, I mean, you've pointed out your experiences and how you got into it and stuff. What has been your most amazing experiences as a bow hunter thus far? And it doesn't have to be South Africa. Don't worry. No,
But subtitle, but it might help. No, I mean, there's been a lot of amazing experiences. I've been incredibly lucky over the past 5-ish years bow hunting. I think that like dogged persistence that I have in my like podcasting has also very much been applied to how I approach hunting. I just put a lot of time in and felt very uncomfortable, and just had to really learn as I go. But I would say, I guess this is a bit of a two-part answer, I guess.
Mm,
So in terms of like biggest achievement, obviously I could like list, oh, these are the animals that I've got on the ground, but that's not really how my brain works. That's not really like the real trophies, so to speak, if you know what I mean. For
yeah.
me, it's certain things, and so what I would say it's like the progress that I feel like I've made, and the fact that I can kind of the way I feel like I can identify as a not terrible bow hunter now. That I think that's important to me because it's something I care about. So for me, I
Yeah.
think that's a big achievement. And what I would say is when I picked up a bow and I was running around the woods in California, but also there were times in South Africa as well where I just didn't really know what I was doing. I was on the family farm. I had no idea about anything. I mean, to be honest, it was February, which is winter, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to the watering hole and see if a springbok comes along. And I get up the crack of dawn, and I'm there, and like all the water is frozen over.
Yeah.
I'm like freezing my tits off. Like there's a cold wind whipping through the 18 layers that I'm wearing, and it's not enough. And I'm thinking any second now, a springbok's going to come along or what? Like lick the ice? So I didn't know anything about anything at that point, but I had still the same enthusiasm and motivation. So what I would say is there was a distinct moment for me when it was almost like I was shown, oh, this is how good hunting can be. This is how skilled someone can be at hunting. And that was actually the moment that I first hunted in the Eastern Cape and got taken under a PH's wing. That was the moment. It's a guy who's actually been on my podcast a couple of times. His name's Fred Hammer. I don't know if you know Fred, but he's learned a bunch from like Dr. Adrian de Villiers. Actually, I think he was taught by Dr. D, another guest. God, I'm doing a lot of name dropping now.
No way.
but
Go.
but he was taught by a guy who's like a legendary hunter in South Africa, a bow hunter, and just taught all these amazing skills. And so going from trying to move around the wilderness and just getting busted all the time, and the senses of African animals are just incredible. They're
Yeah.
so adapted. It's so hectically hard. So then there was just this 2.5 window where I think Fred at that point took pity on me and was like, "Hey, do you want to just come hunt with me for a little bit?" And I swear it was just mind opening and mind blowing at the same time. Like, first of all, I just felt like I was in like GTA Bush. Like I literally think I was playing a video game. I was following Fred, and he's just moving around, and he doesn't have a bow. He's just wearing like a leafy jacket, and he's just walking around quickly. And I don't understand. He's moving fast, and we're moving around the bush, and suddenly we stop. The hand goes up, and he's like, do you want to shoot that kudu right there? And it's like 15 yards away. There's a kudu cow with his head behind a tree. And I'm like, how on earth is this happening? How is nothing seeing us? And like, so proceeded this amazing high octane running around, getting close on animals, moving through, just the way he was moving, and the confidence and the knowledge that he had. It was like he was part of the wild.
Yeah.
And so as a result, the animals weren't detecting him, even though we were moving. So it wasn't about making no movement or no sound whatsoever. It was just like being, hey, I'm just one of you guys, right? JK, here's my bow. I'm going to shoot you now.
Do you think?
So,
Do you think a lot of us, or a lot of people? Sorry, I want to just
yeah,
interrupt you there quick. But do you think that boils down from experience, or do you think as a development of a hunter, you develop this sixth sense, of what's actually out there, of what the next anticipation move is? I was watching an interesting documentary the other day about a sniper, out, and he fought in the Afghan war, and he kind of, the snipers out there actually developed this gut feeling, right? The sixth sense. They that somebody's, watching them, and they could be there, they could be there. So it's that anticipation, and a lot of the times, more than 80% of the times, they actually work out that, where if they had a sixth sense that this guy's watching them from this roof point, 80% of the time he's going to be there. So do you think that's something that's developed through hunting, and continuously
definitely.
repetitiveness out there?
Definitely. I mean, I'd have to hope so, because then one day maybe that means I could be as good as that.
Yeah.
but but yeah, no, I do think it's a sixth sense. It's an inherent thing which we just absorb over time, and it's maybe not even lesson by lesson. It's just the whole immersion and just
Mm.
sequences of experiences mean that you get that. Yeah, you get that body of experience. Or I'm waffling now, but
No.
it's all there. And I think it's definitely through repetition, thousands of times, thousands of different experiences, something's happening in your brain that means that
Mm.
you get that sixth sense. But I think I think the point I was going to make with that long-winded story about chasing Fred Hammer through the through the wilderness and kind of him blowing my mind was that was the moment that I really realized, wow, this is how good it can be. Like this is where I want to be. This is what I need. This is my target. Like I see now what my target is that I need to aim for. And so to answer your question from before, like in a very long-winded way, what's like the biggest achievement? I would say it was just like a 48-hour period. I was back in South Africa a couple of months ago, and there was just this moment where it was the first time, I'd say one of the first times, that it really felt like things were coming together in the way that I'd seen following Fred. And so for me, it was a moment that I was hunting a kudu bull, and I'd done a lot of hunts that time. I think I'd done a number of different hunts, and I'd probably done, I think, hundreds of stalks, and many of them were unsuccessful. Some were successful, but many were unsuccessful. But it's through that repetition, through that try, fuck up, learn, move on, try, fuck up, learn, move on. That whole process just creates a level of comfort and a level of understanding.
Mm.
And the weirdest thing as well is it's almost like I think there's a feeling inside you as well, which I don't understand how, but animals can see that shit.
Mm.
They know if you are feeling unsettled or uncomfortable, or your heart rate's a bit high, or you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, this is getting a bit intense. You know, you're getting the old chemical overload.
Mm.
They have the sixth sense because they've evolved over millions of years to,
Mm.
or maybe, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years. I'm not sure about the science on that, but you know, they can sense that, and they just do. So when you know what's going on, you feel calm, and you're just moving through the bush without being too stressed out, to be honest, not really worrying. Um, those last two successful hunts that I had on a kudu, a nice kudu bull, and a diker, I wasn't even that worried if the hunt was successful or
Mm.
not. It was bizarre. It
Mm.
was just like, this might work out.
Yeah.
I mean, so I can tell you a bit more info about that story if you want, but that's
Yeah.
kind of the vibe of what happened.
I mean, it's and I guess we I kind of had this epiphany on the fellow deer hunt I've just been on, right? And pretty much exactly what you described.
Yeah,
And I was sitting there, and my girlfriend was with me. She was doing all the camera work, and we the day we got there, it's just this intense vibe, right? I've been chasing a fellow deer stag for 13 years. So
yeah,
naturally you're gonna get there and the pressure's gonna be loaded on you.
yeah.
And I think that's what's so interesting about your story is that how connected you've become, not only from an exterior point of view but also from an internal point of view, the way you're so aware of yourself when your heart rate's going up. Because I was sitting there, I kid you not, the exact same. I was sitting there, we've had 3 or 4 bust stalks. I'm getting
Mm,
frustrated.
mhm.
It's now the second morning. We haven't had any success. Not even, we came close the first evening, but it wasn't really close. I shot like an absolute arsehole. But anyway, so the pressure's mounting, your heart rate's rushing, you're sweating, they sense that, right? I mean, they've been chased by fucking lions and shit. Okay, not the fellow deer, but
Yeah.
our species have been chased by predators far superior than us. And I think that was, again, that's been so special to take away from your stories, is that I think a lot of my development as a hunter had to go through traumatic experiences like my depression and all that sort of stuff, because I'm self aware, right? And I knew getting back to lunch on day 2, we had to make a change to take a little bit of pressure. And that's when I told my girlfriend, she's up. It's her turn to shoot. Take that pressure off, realize, go back to square one, compose yourself a little bit so that, and like the success just kept rolling after that. So that
Mm.
was so, I'm glad you said that, because I took a lot of that away. And I mean, like you said, you enjoy it a lot more when you calmer, right? You
Oh
don't
man,
you don't feel like you're under the gauntlet all the time.
so much, dude. It's so true. When you're like present and comfortable, I mean, that's the
Yeah,
dream, right? You're doing something and you're like,
yeah,
this is cool. I'm having fun right now. You're
yeah,
not worried about what the result's going to be. I mean, obviously there's going to be some of that, but
yeah,
you're just enjoying everything that's going on. And I also really think, like you said, that those mental skills that you've learned, or the mental awareness, that has been, I'd say, probably one of the biggest parts of having successes in the field
mm,
with hunting with a bow, is the things that I've learned about mental health and the mental toolbox and all that stuff, like breathing and self-awareness. Because it is crazy, that moment. I tell you, when you come around a bush and there's like a big fat kudu bull at 37 yards, there, there's some intense feelings going
yeah,
on at that moment. That's for sure. I mean, yeah, that was wild. But being able to like assess what's going on, take some action to like calm yourself, calm your body, calm your muscles, take a deep breath, and just reset, and then just be like, right,
yeah.
I'm ready for this now.
I, I,
It's
I'd
been
be
invaluable.
I'd be interested to find out. Do you because this might help me in my PHing side as well, right? Because a
Mm.
lot of the time you can sense clients, especially after a lot of unsuccessful hunts, they start getting intense. And did you feed off of what was the gentleman you went hunting with?
Fred Hammer, yeah.
Did you feed off of him quite a bit? Did he may calm you down a little bit, and was that help out there in the bush?
Yes, I think it makes a big difference who you're with. And Fred's like such a pro, and he's like, he's obviously, I mean, all PHs, I'm
Mm.
guess is the same. You've got so much experience, but he's also just having fun. And yeah, there's moments where you don't want to fuck it up. Obviously, I mean, that's for me. That was like this guy. I'm like, my God, this guy is like an icon to me right now. And please don't. And he's like, yeah, just go through there and do that. I'm like, yeah, let's not fuck this up now because I really don't want to. I would like to keep hunting with this guy. Um. So.
Did he
So
ever
yeah.
grab you and say to you, Rob, just fucking pull yourself together, man?
Yeah, no, I mean there is some funny. There have been some recently. Like we've been hunting pigs a lot and other things, and there's these old jokes from when Fred was learning to hunt with Dr. Adrian de Villiers. And so there's a bit of a that's the language. Whenever you want someone to get on with something, you assume the personality of Dr. Death. And it's usually some line like just shoot your fucking bow or or something like that. So I was actually going. I wasn't going to tell this story, but I mean it's kind of relevant, I guess. We were trying to hunt pigs, and we'd been on our feet all morning. We probably hiked like 20 k's, and in that area, the pigs have been super skittish, like unusually skittish. We hadn't seen many, and they had been running. But we got in on a pig, and I'd already said to Fred actually beforehand, and I don't remember whether he rolled his eyes at this or not. I don't think he did, but I said like for whatever reason, like mentally, I'm not feeling as there today. So if we take a shot on something, it's going to have to be really close, and I'm going to have to be comfortable. Otherwise, I'm not gonna take the shot. And I think that's actually something I'm like quite proud of, I think, in general,
Mm,
because it's very easy to be like, oh, I just hope it's going to be okay. Just throw an arrow, And it's a hard thing for me to actually do that. Like, if I'm like, ooh, I'm not feeling great right now, I'm just gonna, again, like I said before, being kind of kind to yourself, because it's when you don't listen to that, that's when shit goes bad and
yeah.
you start having really bad experiences. So we'd hiked all morning. It was like the afternoon. We got around to this watering hole, and there was a pig. Um, I was drawn back on a pig. There was like three pigs. None of them were very big, and he was filming for ages. And yeah, ultimately he was kind of like, I think he was zoomed in on another pig for ages. And he said to me like, why aren't you like why didn't you shoot the pig? I'm like, oh, I was waiting for the big one to turn and give me a broadside, and then they all ran away. It wasn't ideal. But we got another opportunity shortly afterwards, and I swear this pig came in. We were on our knees, like crawled into a perfect spot. It kind of moved into position, and it was like 22 yards away, super close, very comfortable shot. But I took my time and I took the shot, and the thing dropped like within sight. Great situation. But Fred did after that. He was like, man, I was about to slap you. You should have, you, in my head, I was thinking, shoot your fucking bow. But it was, I thankfully I did. And the thing was, I know that if I hadn't, he would have been fine.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have given me a hard time. He's very aware. His people skills are very, very good. So I'm sure he would have been thinking that, but maybe on the outside it would have been a different story.
Rob, so I mean, he's the way you've connected and everything. It's very humbling, and I must say, from my perspective, it's so cool to see somebody engage with the inner feelings and the bush. But if you had to, I think as hunters, we all got a different perspective on what our projection is as a hunter, but what would you say yours is? What would you like to take away and remember that you did this for whatever reason? Feed your family, conservation, a lot of the things that have gone
Yeah,
on.
it's a good question. I think all of those things kind of combine. I'd say definitely first and foremost, foremost. Not sure what that was. I'd say putting meat on the table and getting like there's a real sense of pride for me in having a deep freeze in here in California, and then also my wife's family's deep freeze in South Africa. But knowing that where I am, wherever I am, all the meat that I eat is stuff that I've sourced myself through my own, I guess, persistence and kind of things that I've learned. And then I guess you're asking about what my ambitions are. What do I always strive to achieve?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, if the first thing that I should also say, I guess it would be the second thing, if I'm holding myself up. I think that I also just really strive to make ethical choices, and I've kind of already explained that a bit with my previous story, but really holding myself up and not just flinging arrows. And that's in the moment, but it's also in the preparation. So, I mean, I'm pretty busy at the moment. I'm working very hard on this podcast and other jobs and everything, and so it's it's a juggle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm still really working hard to shoot arrows almost every day, and just keep throughout. It's not like an off season, on season. It's just maintaining strength, maintaining my form, and really being comfortable with those skills, because I know when it comes to the crucial moment, unless you've really put the work in, everything just can just
Mm,
go out the window.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So that, for one, is, I think it's an important thing, like putting the work in to make sure if you're going to choose to do something insanely hard, like bow hunting, where the odds are going to be stacked against you, and there's a pretty good chance of things going wrong that are out of your control. You've really got to work. At least for me personally, I'm happiest when I've really worked at making sure all the things that are in my control are absolutely on point. You know.
Do you think that's a responsibility that all hunters should practice? Because when you look at it, I've always said this, and this is my opinion, and I would love to hear yours. Is when you've got life involved and you take in something's life, regardless of what the point is behind it, things have to be done ethically and with respect, right? Do you think your hard work that you've put in, like you said, it's not easy to juggle things and get home and still shoot arrows into a butt and practice you and in hone on your skills? And do you think that's more of a sign of not only do you want to be a better hunter, but you also want to show those animals that you laugh, you obviously will optimize and probably going to take? Because let's face it, right? If you stalking 300 times and just flinging arrows willy nilly, the chances of you hitting unethically are very good. So,
Yeah.
but if you hone in on your skills and you've put in the work and you've like you said, you've become a better hunter. Do you think that's more about respecting on what the profession actually is?
I do. Yeah, I think it's a double-edged thing. It's about
Mm,
respecting the animal and giving them the cleanest ending
mm,
possible, the minimal amount of suffering. And I mean, I'll be honest, I put my hands up. It doesn't always go smoothly, It
yeah.
doesn't, you can't always, especially jumping the string and animals doing all kinds of bonkers stuff that I've never seen before. it's not always perfect, but I think it's absolutely important to just try and do the best you can for those animals. And
Mm.
this is a bit of a sidetrack. I'm wondering if I should go down this sidetrack. Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, I just think nature is completely savage, and that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize. And I guess I'm aware this audience, everybody knows that, so I'm preaching
Yeah.
to the converted here. But most people in life, they get their National Geographic, David
Mm.
Attenborough, BBC representation of nature, where you don't see the absolutely crazy shit that is happening, like the heartless,
Mm.
complete lack of like morality. There's no, it just doesn't exist. It's not.
Mm.
It's just survival. And no, if an animal being alive for longer so that the predatory animal can eat faster and get what they need, they don't give a shit.
Mm.
And so it's interesting. There's an interesting duality with that, right? Where we as humans hold ourselves up to a moral principle of reducing suffering as much as possible. And I think that that's good because ultimately it's what's right for me and what's right for also how we present hunting as well.
Mm.
As a brand, hunting in general as a brand, it's important for it to be shown in the right light. But ultimately we are animals.
Mm.
And nature is metal, to quote the Instagram. I don't know if anyone's ever been on that, but it's hectic. It's all the footage that doesn't make it to David Attenborough's desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's a bit of a sidestep, but it's a complex thing. I think it's about
It
being
is.
aware that nature is really brutal, but we are part of that. But if we can do whatever we can to do what feels right for us in terms of our morality, our human nature, then
Mm.
I think that that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. I I couldn't have said it better. I think if we all just come to the terms that probably hunters are one of the most um, em, I think empathetic is the right word. We're very we we have a lot of empathy for life, and I think as hunters, one of the biggest misconceptions is that we don't. We just kill willy nilly and go on our willy way, but it's completely the other way around. I mean, I think us as humans, we've created these fake, false ecosystems, and we've got to manage them now. But yeah, I like that. I like that take on what you did there. It's really cool, and for somebody who's been in it for only 5 years, you really embraced it, and that's something very, very special. I mean, not a lot of people get to say that. So yeah, Rob, I guess coming towards the end here now, and I wanted so I started a new section on the podcast called Beyond the Camo, and I think this ties in beautifully with that. And so part of these episodes is not only do we touch base on stuff outside of the hunting, like we did with the men's health and the mental health side of things, but we just touch abroad. And I wanted to ask you firstly before I get into the questions, what who who is the one person in your life that you've looked up to, and that you can comfortably say, or you've looked up to as a role model?
In my life,
Yeah.
in general, or within the hunting world?
No, in general. In general.
Oof. Wow, that's a tough one. Yeah. I think I'd have to think a bit more about that one. I don't want to just give you a willy nilly answer on that. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think who is it that I look up to most in my life. I mean, you could go down two angles. You could go down like icons, people who are, you know,
Morally, who have you you as an individual, who have you tried to strive not to be, but who you've worked on from a moral point of view? Because I mean, you're a very morally correct person. You do a lot of the correct things, and you know you're very inspiring. So
uh, this might be this might be a bit of a cop out, but I might have to say my wife. It
okay.
sounds like a sweet answer, but I think if I'm honest, I don't actually really look outwards that much. It's something I feel lucky to say is that I'm not terribly worried about what other people are doing too much. Um, I'm usually just in the sense of kind of comparing, keeping up with the Joneses and all that kind of thing. So I guess
Yeah.
in a similar way, there must be people that I admire and I take things from, but I think the thing that my wife does is she holds me accountable. She's definitely my moral compass. Um, I obviously have my own, but I think we're quite different as individuals, and I think we balance each other very well. And I think it's that butting of heads and constant awareness of one another that has really helped make me a little more compassionate and a little more aware of other people and that kind of thing. And I think it's easy given the kind of the life that I had growing up. And yeah, I think I was a bit of a selfish bastard when I was young.
Well, at least you admit it. Not many guys do, and that's. I mean, that's amicable. I enjoy that. And so, part of another tradition we've got on the podcast now is we've started the questions answer. I'm going to ask you to leave a question behind for my next guest, but we'll do that off air. So,
Okay, okay.
my question that was left behind from my previous guest for you is, what would be the one thing you would say looking back at your life now? If you had met Robin when he was 13 years old, what would be the one piece of advice you would offer him?
You're never going to get into the Olympics playing hockey. No, no, no. I'm kidding. No, I think I would probably say try not to worry too much about where you're heading or where you're trying to go, but just enjoy what's going on right now and check out something called meditation. That would have been nice to have known at 13.
Rob, I mean, that is cool. I enjoy that. So, quick one, getting into the formalities of things here. The Wild Dispatch, that's out on all major platforms, if I'm correct.
It is, yeah. It's everywhere where people like to forage for their podcasts. It's
Okay.
yeah. The Wild Dispatch is also. I'm on Instagram. I'm kind of rolling out. I've been going for I guess like coming up to a year now, maybe just slightly less. And it's a process, you know. I'm trying not to do too much too quickly. But
Yeah,
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 so definitely on Instagram, a bit of TikTok, a bit of yeah, it's like Facebook is just being set up, and also YouTube. So if you just search at the Wild Dispatch, it should come up
yeah.
for all those names. So yeah, that's where you'll be able to see stories and adventures and interviews. Yeah, I'm going to start producing more content of my own things that are happening. It's one of those things, right? Like I have all this footage. It's a classic. I think it should be called
Yeah.
like GoPro syndrome, where you just have a ton of footage and excuse me.
to go through it all. It's almost like you need to hire a full-time editor.
Yeah, we'll see when that happens. But yeah, I think that's the ambition. That's the goal in the future. Yeah, but
No,
also thank you so much, dude. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It was amazing that you wanted to be a guest on my show, first of all. So thank you for that. That was fantastic, and it's lovely to be back.
yeah, it's and like I said, I mean, I love on these podcasts you meet a bunch of people and you always say, like, I really enjoyed that conversation. That was I took so much not only personally out of it, but for the good of the industry, right? And I think this was definitely one of those. So I hope we get to do it again soon, my friend. And I know you're an officially a resident here in South Africa. Are you yet? So,
It's on the cards. It's on the cards. I
paperwork.
have to figure out whether I can try and get another passport, but I don't know if I'm going to be allowed.
Well, next time you're here, I would love to have you over and come and take you around. I mean, you've been to the Eastern Cape a couple of times, so we can go and
Dude, yeah.
chase some bunch of different things. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I mean, your podcast is doing exceptionally well. I love listening to it. It's probably one of my first ones that I click on every time I hit the road. So
Oh,
keep it up. I mean, you're doing an exceptional job, and yeah, I look forward to the future.
amazing, dude. Thank you. It's always nice to hear some kind words. Yeah, you never quite know if you're just like screaming into a void. If anyone's hearing you, it's always the risk, isn't it? But
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a great experience, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's amazing to all the connections and experiences and opportunities. I would love to go hang out next time we're together in South Africa. It'll be amazing. And if you make it over here in the US, then yeah, we'd have to get together and try and
yeah.
chase some animals here.
There we go. Rob, thanks so much, bud. And yeah, have a good day for us this evening. So we'll chat soon.
Thanks, too. Thanks.
Cheers.